Hello and welcome to today's Office Hours presentation. This is Paul Hoyt, welcoming you to Office Hours, which is a relaxed, informal mentoring program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recordings, slides, and exercises and handouts are archived in the members area of our website, and all the recordings are available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reasons we do these office hours presentations is that I know that being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but I also know that it's tough. You need the education, training, tools, and team in order to be successful, and we want you to get to know us, because when you get to know us, you know that we really do care. First and most importantly, we care about you. We want you to be successful in every area of life, whatever that means to you. We want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every single day. Our passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America. And our vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. And you can help by passing the word. If you find these office hours presentations valuable to you, or Awaken Conversations presentations valuable to you, please pass the word to some entrepreneur, business owner that you know, and invite them to come to our website, sign up so that they can attend the office hours presentations as well. Usually our office hours agenda is an in-depth discussion of a business success principle with closing remarks, special offers, and an invitation for next week's session, and then open Q&A and coaching. Today, however, is just all live coaching, group coaching. We invite you to join us during the call and in other places as well in the Awaken CEO communities on both LinkedIn and Facebook, where we post the business success principle of the day 4 days a week, and we post the energy of the day every day on Facebook. I think today was number 648 in a row. During the call, we invite you to go to the Facebook Awaken CEO community and make comments, ask questions, share insights, and share takeaways. And our goal is to have 20 comments and likes in the Facebook group. Before we get started on today's call, I want to remind you of an Awaken CEO Conversation. That's a webinar that we do every other week, which is primarily focused on business and spiritual growth. It is an interactive webinar with questions, much like today's session will be. And our next one is on Wednesday, September the 9th. That's a week from Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Watch your emails for sign-up information. And I also want to invite you to the Awaken CEO Brilliant Business virtual event. That is a free interactive planning workshop that we provide for everybody in our community. It's on Saturday, September the 19th from 8:30 to 12:30 p.m., 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. So for 4 hours with some breaks in there, we're going to be talking about the status of your business, inviting you to set some goals for next quarter. So come and join us for this all-day planning event. Please watch your emails for sign-up information. Just because you're signed up for office hours and or the Awaken Conversation doesn't mean that you're necessarily signed up for the Awaken CEO Brilliant Business virtual event. It's just people who have recently signed up for the Quick Start program will automatically get a ticket to that. Today's topic on our office hours session is on open Q&A and just live group coaching. As usual, we try to relate the subject matter of our office hours presentations to one or more of the key performance area. And today it's just open hunting. It's open season. So you're welcome to ask any question that you would like on leadership, marketing, sales, financial management, service, product development, and any of the areas. Operations administration is the other area. Any of the 7 key performance areas of business, you're welcome to ask a question about. And with the Awaken CEO system, we focus on 3 different levels of performance: on your mindset, on your methods, and your momentum. And likewise, you're welcome to ask questions on any one of those 3 levels of performance as well. Before we get into the Q&A, I want to remind you of the last couple of previous office hours presentations, because it might bring up a question or a discussion topic for you. Office hours number 87, we focused on nonprofits, and on number 88, we focused on the coaching profession. In Office Hours 87, we talked about the difference between for-profit enterprises and nonprofit enterprises. We talked about IRS rules and definitions for nonprofit enterprises, and we talked about the 34 different types of nonprofits. The most common one is, of course, the 501c3, which is a charitable nonprofit, but there are lots and lots of other ones for special purpose things like trade associations and homeowners associations, etc. We talked about the challenges that nonprofits typically face, the relationships between for-profit and nonprofit enterprises, and we talked about a special kind of enterprise, which is a B Corp, which is a for-profit enterprise, but those are companies that are certified by a nonprofit organization called B Labs that enjoy special consideration in many, many states. So I encourage you to watch this presentation and listen to it if you haven't so far. We ended it with considerations for a nonprofit and then the bottom line. In office hours number 88, we talked about the coaching profession, about the direct coaches and indirect coaches. We defined what it meant to be a coach, talked about the values of coaching, the many types of coaches that there were, and we talked about the relationship in between coaches, or the distinguishing characteristics between regular indirect coaches and direct coaches and consultants, advisors, and mentors. We talked about some of the challenges with being a coach, some of the skills that you can have as a coach. And by the way, we encourage everybody to understand what coaching is all about so that they could employ the coaching communication style whenever it was really advantageous to them in a business environment. And we summed it all up with the bottom line. So with that little reminder of office hours number 87 on nonprofits and office hours number 88 on the coaching profession, we're going to open it up to live questions and answers now. For those of you who are attending the call, if you'd like to ask a question live, just raise your hand in some way, and we will take you off of mute and invite you to join us and hear your fine voice on the call. Or you're welcome to type a question into the chat log. And of course, if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, just type it into the chat log and just say, please don't share my name, or anonymous or something like that. And we'll invite you to do that. Every once in a while, somebody asks a question that is, of a sensitive nature relative to finances or dealing with relationships with employees or partners, and they prefer to ask those questions anonymously. And of course, we are happy to honor that arrangement. Everything that we do as consultants and coaches is anonymous. And because I have my ministerial credentials, if we were in a personal coaching environment, it's also privileged conversation. So, even under subpoena, I would not be forced to talk about some of the things that we talk about in our personal coaching relationships. But today it's all about business. And Stephanie, do we have any questions for today's that have come in so far?
Yes, they're starting to come in. Let me get the first one here for you. Here's first one. We have several different growth opportunities with different potential partners. How do we decide which partners to work with first?
I'm going to broaden that question just a little bit on because sometimes you have growth opportunities that involve partners, and sometimes you have growth opportunities that don't involve partners. And I'm an analyst, so generally speaking, if you come to me and ask me for the solution to a problem, it's going to involve a spreadsheet or some sort of a plan to think it through. And in this particular question, when people come and say, I've got several different alternatives, what should I do? I encourage them to think about creating a decision matrix. A decision matrix, is a tool that we have that helps you identify what your decision criteria are and gives you a relative weighting of those different decision criteria. And then we assign points or relative values to the different options that we have. For example, you may decide that your number one criteria is short-term growth, short-term capital gain, or short-term cash flow. So if that becomes the most important criteria you have for you, then it may be more important for you to choose one option or the other based upon the likelihood that it would generate cash very quickly. On the other hand, if your business is stable and steadily growing, you may choose to invest a lot of time in those partnerships or alliances or new products and new markets and new locations, etc., that would have a little bit of longer term payoff, but a much larger payoff in the long run. So it really depends on the situation that you are in and whether or not you're willing to take the risk and invest the time in an opportunity to work with a partner or an opportunity to grow your business in some other way, or whether or not you need a very quick return on that investment. When it comes to partners, one of the things that's really important to me when it comes to partnering relationships is to understand a couple of things. Number one is that if your partner's business is taking off and your business is taking off, before you tie a rope around those two rocket ships, you want to make sure that they're on the same course. Because if they're not on the same course, and especially if you're in a rapid expansion framework, you might find that 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, the partnership is no longer tenable because your business has changed so much or their business has changed so much that the partnership doesn't make near as much sense. So one of the first questions I encourage you to ask of any potential partner is, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? What's generally your long-term direction, so that you can determine whether this is a short-term partnership, a tactical opportunity to do a webinar together, to share a booth at a trade show, to work on some sort of a quick hit scenario, or whether it's an opportunity for a very long partnership, and understand that. The second thing when it comes to partners is that you want to make sure that you're partnering with somebody that is financially successful. I see many times people think, well, my business isn't successful, and I know this other guy that's a great guy or a great gal, and their business isn't very successful either. So maybe by teaming up with each other, that we'll bring more success to both of us. And while that is possible, it's not likely if the challenge that you're having is one of marketing and sales. Because if you're an engineer and they're an engineer, two engineers together, engineer plus engineer does not equal marketing and sales expertise. If you're an engineer, partner with somebody that has marketing and sales expertise. If you have great marketing and sales expertise, then partner with somebody who is an engineer who has a unique product opportunity that they can bring to your customer base. So make sure that when you choose a partner, that partner really is already successful in some way, and so that they're not particularly looking at you to bring them success where they have no success. I'm a big fan of choosing to work with successful partners, and a big fan of making sure you understand whether this is a short-term partnering opportunity or a long-term partnering opportunity. And of course, being an analyst, I'm a big fan of analyzing your different options according to your decision criteria and the relative weight of those decision criteria, so that you can see which option to pursue. I did a decision matrix for a client just last week, and they were pretty much stunned at the results. They really didn't really understand that of the 4 options that they were considering, one was really head and shoulders above all of the other options when they just thought it through a little bit and determined what their own decision criteria were going to be, and then rated and weighted the different options that they have until something popped out the other side that said, hey, this is exactly what you should do. So I hope that that was helpful for you, and I wish you a lot of success when it comes to partnering. I do have a couple of office hours presentations on transfer of value and another one on joint ventures. I'm not sure exactly what those numbers are, but you can look them up on our website. And if you want to know more about forming great partnerships, I encourage you to go back and listen to those office hours presentations. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. I recently went to a conference and have a lot of options for who to work with. How do I decide?
That's a question that I get a lot. As many of you know, I'm a member of a CEO Space community, and I've been to 55 of these conferences. And usually the feedback that I get on the other end of that conference is that the members there get inundated and sometimes overwhelmed with opportunities to work with people. There's a lot of people in my business. There's lots of consultants, and there are other branding specialists and marketing specialists and social media specialists and CFOs and strategists. they abound with. There's a lot of opportunity for you to find people who want to help you take that next step in your business. Some of those people offer what I call point solutions, or very specific solutions. They're a branding expert, or they're a financial management expert, or they're a strategist, or they're a social media expert. And they're very confident and very capable in what they do, and they know that the service that they provide would be valuable for you. We take a slightly different approach here. We see ourselves as kind of like the family doctor. When you don't know what to do next and you really don't know what your condition is and you need a checkup, well, instead of going to a heart specialist or a brain surgeon or somebody else who's a specialty, you go to the family doctor first. And that family doctor takes a look at where you are, takes a look at your any sort of illness or injuries that you might have, takes a look at your wellness, and then recommends a course of action based upon what your current situation is. One of my favorite sayings is that if you make making a prescription before you've done your diagnostic work is malpractice. We wouldn't walk into a doctor's office and just have that doctor's office say, without taking a look at you, hey, I need to prescribe this medicine to you. Or you wouldn't you'd think the doctor was a quack if you walked into their office and said, I don't know you and I haven't looked at you, but, we need to do a little brain surgery here. But all the time in business, we go to people who have one specific thing that they do, and they know that the thing that they do has helped many, many businesses. So they strongly encourage you to make a decision in their favor, to write them a check for a few $1,000s or many, many thousands of dollars, without really understanding who you are, where you're going, how quickly you want to get there, the resources that you have at your disposal, etc. We always like to say that we only recommend to our clients that which they can use, that's which they really need, and that which they can really afford. So when it comes to selecting who you work with next, if you've got a lot of opportunities, my advice is go with the family doctor first. Go with somebody who will take a look at your entire situation and then make recommendations for you as to what you might do after that and who you might get on your team as a specialist secondly. So go to the generalist first and then the specialist second if you yourself don't know how to choose between all of the specialists that are available to you. Hope that was helpful to you, and I hope that you take that advice too. We at our company pride ourselves on making sure that we never sell something to somebody unless it's really going to be the perfect thing for them to move their business forward. And I hope that all the other folks that you are considering take that same sort of compassionate and conscious approach to doing business with you as well. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay, beautifully said. This next question actually comes from one of our clients. Can you explain the cost of capital? Love this one.
The cost of capital, that's an interesting topic. So for anybody that's raising capital, it will cost you something to raise that capital. It will cost you, in some cases, people want business plans and a formal offering document, maybe even a private placement memorandum. So you may pay monies to folks like myself to help create the business plan and the financial model, and to a securities attorney to help create the capital offering. You may also create marketing messages and brochures, one-pagers, flyers, invitations to come to a capital presentation. You may jump on the plane and head to Atlanta, Georgia, and attend an angel group meeting. And so you'll have the travel expenses of getting there, and the hotel and the meal expenses while you are there. And some angel groups will actually charge you $1,000 or even $2,000, and I've seen them charge $15,000 for you to have the opportunity to get on a stage and talk to a lot of investors and make your pitch to investors. You may pay for a website or a portal that allows you to put your investor offering on so that other accredited investors across the United States can see your offering. You may have some fees that you pay to Quickstarter or GoFundMe or Indiegogo where they take a portion of the fees that you have raised out the other end. All of those things that I've talked about, the crowdfunding platform, the directory platforms, the travel that expenses that you might have going to angel group meetings or flying across the country to make your pitch to an individual investor, and the monies that you might spend with a business consultant or a securities attorney, money that you spend on branding, all of that stuff are examples of things that you might spend money on in the effort or in the process of raising capital. And all of that then becomes the cost of capital. If you're in a position to where you have a large company and you work with an investment banker to go get capital for your business or to look for a merger target or to even sell your business, there's the cost of that capital too, and that's anywhere from 5 to 10%, depending upon how much capital that you are raising. If you IPO your business and you create a public offering, their cost of capital is the fees that you would pay to the investment banking firms and the brokerage firms for those people who are selling other investors on the idea of investing in your business. So that's what cost of capital is all about. And generally speaking, we like to hold the cost of capital down to 5 to 10% of the amount that you're going to raise. So if you're going to raise $1 million, for you to spend $100,000 over the course of the next 6 to 9 months to raise that $1 million, to me is perfectly reasonable. If you're going to raise $200,000, for you to spend, $20,000 to raise that $200,000 is perfectly reasonable to me. That's a 10% cost of capital. If you can raise that $200,000 and only spend $10,000 doing it, you've done pretty good. That's only a 5% cost of capital. But you got to watch the math here a little bit. If you're raising only $100,000, but you're spending, $25,000 in order to go to a conference, hire somebody to write a business plan, hire a securities attorney to create a private placement memorandum, and you're spending $25,000 to raise the $100,000, all of a sudden your cost of capital is $25,000, and that's 25%. And to me, that's a little bit too much. So generally speaking, by the way, if you're raising less than $200,000, I encourage you to do something other than get a complete business plan and a complete private placement memorandum. And fortunately, there are other options available to us. You can deal with family and friends. You can do crowdfunding platforms. You can do other things in order to raise monies that's less than $200,000, and so that you don't have, a really outrageous cost of capital associated with that money raise. Hope that was helpful to you. And I noticed, on our call, we got some people in our community that are really professional at helping you find the funds and coaching you through that capital raising process. I'm a capital coach, but I generally don't pick up the phone and make calls for you. I do know some people who will actually make the calls for you and assist you in the capital raising process. And of course, they want a fee for their services as well, which is all part of the cost of capital too. So hopefully that explained that term cost of capital and what that means. And if you are raising capital, by all means give us a call, because we have years and years of experience in helping people determine how much capital to raise and helping them go through and raise that capital. And we have some really great resources who can help you raise the capital as well. Hopefully that was helpful. Next question.
Okay. This goes off of what we were just chatting about.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, when working with a contractor, what are the pros and cons of working with someone local as opposed to working with someone long distance if they're both equally qualified?
Excellent question. So generally speaking, if they're both equally qualified and they charge the same amount, I would go with the local person. And the reason is because when we look somebody face to face, when we can bond with them over a cup of coffee or an occasional meeting, or we can just hang out together for some reason, there's a little more trust and rapport and a little more communication. The science of communication says that what is it, 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So that means the tone of our voice, the expression on our face, our body language, all of that communicates with other people in addition to the words that we choose to come out of our mouth. So my belief is that you're going to have a little more trust and rapport, a little stronger, tighter relationship, a little better communication if you can meet with somebody face to face physically every once in a while. Now, that being said, 95% of everything that I do is done virtually. I meet people, clients, new clients, old clients, time and time again at the CEO Space Conference, where I've been going 5 times a year. So we do have an opportunity to meet face to face and bond face to face in that physical environment. But most of the work that I do with clients is over the telephone, over the internet, and so we have to bond in different ways. And one of the ways in which I choose to bond is through the use of a video camera. So just like this office hours presentation, if you're attending it live, you can see my face, and I always try to look right into the camera because I know that that enhances communication quite a bit. It's not there on the recordings, so if you're just listening to the recordings of the office hours, you won't see my face on camera. But when I create special programs like the 5 Choices of Winning CEOs, the Business Survival Bootcamp, and some of the other mini courses that we have, I do them with a product that allows me to record the camera in addition to recording the presentation so that we have a little better bonding experience. So I encourage you to, if everything else is equal, and by the way, it's almost never equal, but if you perceive everything to be equal, just as strong of skills and experience, just as strong of a relationship that you've established with him, same sort of price, then my recommendation is go with a local person. But don't hesitate to work with somebody that's remote, because in this internet-enabled society that we have, the ability for us to meet on Skype, to meet on Google Hangouts, to go to meeting sessions together where we're sharing our cameras and bonding in that particular way, you can get some pretty darn good communication going through the use of technology today, assuming that things are not exactly equal. Hopefully that was helpful. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. I finally got caught up with my bookkeeping. How do I stay caught up?
That's a great question. As some of you know, that I am a CFO for some of my clients. I've got 3 or 4 clients that I work with right now where I take on the CFO responsibilities. And part of that job is making sure that things get caught up and then stayed caught up. A lot of times when I work with clients, it takes us some number of months before we develop the routines, develop the processes and the procedures whereby somebody can get caught up and stay caught up. And the way you stay caught up is by having an end of the month procedure. Excuse me. So that means at the first of every month that you focus for the next 4 or 5 days on making sure that you get things tidied up from the month before, that you're updating your QuickBooks or some other accounting system, that you're sending out your invoices and statements, that you're posting your expense reports, that you're paying your bills and recording your bills, and that you are closing the books on the next month. One of my goals in my own personal business, by the way, is I close my books for the previous month in the first weekend of the next month. So that means that for me particularly, here next weekend, I'll be closing the books for August. And I have, a 25-point checklist that I go through every single month to make sure I'm closing my own books appropriately. And in your business, if you're working with a CFO or a bookkeeper, or whether you're just doing it for yourself, I encourage you to create that end of month checklist and then focus on it so that you're closing the books in the previous month in a reasonable time frame. I learned that, by the way, when I was the CIO of a manufacturing company from 1985 through 1990. And at that manufacturing company, we had a very rigorous, and it wasn't a 20-step process, it was more like a 100-step process for the accounting team and the information systems department, which is what I was running, and the people out on the shop floor and the executives to go through, because our goal was to close the books by the 5th business day of every month. So they were on a 4-4-5 calendar, which meant that we always closed the month on a Friday, even if it wasn't technically the calendar end of the month. And our goal was by the close of business the next Friday, which was the 5th business day of the month, that we had to have our books closed. And the reason is because we were owned by a company overseas, and that company overseas, wanted us to close the books by the 5th business day of the books so that we could send our financial results to them so that they could close their books within a few days and be able to give a quality report to their shareholders and their executive teams, which was by necessity a roll-up of all the subsidiaries that they had. So we were on a very tight accounting calendar. We started actually closing the end of the month 2 or 3 days before the end of the month, making sure that we had some idea of the deals that we're going to close, and we did a preliminary close and a trial close, and then we did our final close. So it was a very, very rigorous process. And that's the way that you stay caught up, is that you create a checklist, you create an end of the month process and procedure, and you focus everybody's attention on that so that you are, in fact, closing the books every single month according to a checklist, according to a schedule, with some amount of emphasis and attention paid on it, so that you can make sure that that happens. So that's the way to do it. First of all, get caught up. If you're not caught up, get caught up, and then stay caught up by focusing your time and attention and through creating an end of the month checklist and being very diligent on that checklist every single month. Nice question. I love that. And of course I love that because I'm a CFO, and it's one of the things that we do is help people get caught up and stay caught up. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. We've got Robin on the call, and I don't know if she's able to chat with you, but she's got a couple things on her mind. And today's, let me tell you what she's got here.
Okay.
In today's volatile economy, where are the safe havens for early stage companies? What can early stage companies do to protect and grow their businesses when many are forecasting a bumpy ride in the near future?
Well, that's an interesting question, because we do see, one of the things that we face here in the United States is that every, some number of years, 8, 9, or 10 years, or 7 years, we have a recession. It's just happened. We had one in 91 through 92. We had one that started in 2000, late 1999 or 2000, with what they call the internet bubble had burst at that point in time. And we were starting to pull out of that in 2001 when the 9/11 disaster hit. The terrorist attacks at 9/11 2001 delayed our recovery from that recession for a year or two. And then we had the recession of 2008, and now we're back into a boom market and have been for the last 2 or 3 years. So I hear a lot of people predicting a very rocky road ahead. We're seeing issues with China and the devaluation of their currency. And I hear lots of prognosticators, some of them psychic and intuitive, and some of them because of financial issues that they see or warning signs that they see in the stock markets. They're predicting that the year 2016 might not be a great year, and that kind of makes sense to me because of the natural cycles of our economy that I've been watching for the last 30 or 40 years. So it does make sense that the United States would have another recession, another correction at some point in time. It does not make sense to me that it would be nearly as bad as the one that we had in 2008, but it does make sense to me that sometime in 2016, late 2015, 2016, early 2017, that we would see some sort of correction in the marketplace. So with that, let's talk about what that means to you and me as a small business person. If you are not financially stable today, my strong encouragement to you is to get financially stable just as quickly as possible, because you want to have a platform of financial stability that allows you to ride out much easier any sort of downturn in the economy that you see in the coming, in the coming years. You'll find yourself a stable customer base. If you're a very small business, find those 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 customers that represent 80% of your revenues, and focus all of your time and attention on nurturing those relationships so that the relationships don't go away if the economy goes down. You might find that instead of spending $20,000 a month with you, they're only spending $15,000 a month with you. But if you nurture the relationship, I think you'll find the odds are that they're not just going to terminate the relationship when their business starts to go south and they have to cut down on the number of people that they are working with. So by all means, now is the time, I think, to focus on financial stability. And now is the time, I would suggest as well, to be cautious about those expansion opportunities that you have. So if you have an expansion opportunity that you think is going to consume a tremendous amount of all of your available cash, and it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to pay off, now might not be the most strategic time to engage in that expansion opportunity. Rather, I would encourage you to think about expansion opportunities that have, a 6-month payout or a 90-day payout or a year payout or less, not something that's 2 to 3 years on its payout. So now's the time to be a little cautious and a little conservative, to focus on financial stability, to focus on rapid return on investment, because of what I think is what many people are predicting, and what I think makes sense, that our market, our economy would see a bit of a correction, maybe a little bit of a recession, although again, not near what we saw in 2008 and 2009, coming up sometime in the next couple of years. That just makes kind of sense to me. I don't know that there's any safe havens, nothing that's going to protect you from that. Here's an example. There were a whole bunch of travel companies that went out of business in 2001 and 2002 when the federal government decided they did put a ban on air travel. If you'll recall, after September 2001, there was like a 35 or a 30 to 45 day, maybe even a 60-day ban on air travel. So travel agencies and a whole bunch of seminar and workshop companies just went belly up because they couldn't survive the 60 days, 90 days, 120 days with little to no income. So make sure that you're not in that position too, that some sort of external nasty event that doesn't cause you to have to fold the tent and go home because you didn't have the cash flow necessary to survive, a really bad 60 or 90 day spell. So that's would be another good tip for you when it comes to surviving what many people are predicting to be rocky times or tough times ahead. Hopefully that was helpful for you. And next question. And I don't know, Robin, I'm going to take you off of mute for just a second and see if you're there. I'm not sure if you can say hello to us and see if that was...
Hi there. Yes,
Hi, Robin.
am.
Was that helpful for you?
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. I'm not a doomsayer at all, but I have lived here on this planet for a while, and I've seen these ebbs and flows of the economy, and it seems like the different factions are all kind of converging rather quickly. That could be damaging, and that's why I know sticking close to you, Paul, is probably the best safe haven there is.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. Did you have another question or a discussion topic before I put you back on mute?
No, I think you did well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you showing up for a lot of these calls. Robin and I have had the chance to work together for many, many years now. She's really good. By the way, she's one of those resources that helps people raise capital. So if you're interested in an introduction, you're listening to this recording or attending live, just send me a quick email and I'd be happy to make that introduction for you. Next question. Oh, by the way, before we go to the next question, I do want to take just a little time out here and and focus a little bit on who we are at the Hoyt Management Group. We are a different company. We do focus on the whole person. And as I mentioned earlier in one of the questions, we just want you to get the support that you want, need, can use, and can afford with our Awakened CEO system. With the support services that we offer to our clients, we are both a planning and an execution firm with a heavy, heavy emphasis on execution, because we know that it's all about the execution. Listen, we're real proud of the plans that we help our clients create. We're proud of the strategic plans. We're proud of the midterm plans. We're proud of the 90-day growth plans. We're proud of the business plans. We're proud of the financial models, because we know that really with proper planning that you can have greater productivity. What is the old phrase, and pardon my language, that proper planning prevents piss poor performance? Well, proper planning really increases productivity as well, and we're a big, big believer in that planning. But as you can see by the diagram, if you're watching the presentation, you know, planning is having your vision defined is about 1%, understanding what your status is another 1%, having a great plan in place is another 1% of your success, gathering the resources is 2 or 3%, and that means that executing, doing the work day after day after day that's necessary in order for you to make progress in your business is really what it's all about. We strongly encourage you to focus on execution. That's one of the 5 choices of winning CEOs that we focus on. Your ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome to meet the challenges of the marketplace, to solve the problems, to fix the issues that come up. And we're proud to be a firm that not only helps you create the plans, but also helps you execute the plans that we help you create. I want to remind you about the Awakened CEO conversation. The next one's on September the 9th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, where me and a special guest, where we'll be talking about personal growth and spiritual growth and how that relates to business growth. So join us on Wednesday, September the 9th for our next Awakened conversation. And mark your calendar right now for Saturday, September the 19th, where we'll hold our first ever Awakened CEO Brilliant Business virtual event, which is a free interactive planning workshop to help you plan the last quarter of this year and help you get better results. Watch your emails for sign-up information. I'm really looking forward to that virtual event, our day-long Brilliant Business event. And our next office hours will be on September 14th. That's right, we are skipping a week. Next week on Monday is Labor Day, so we're skipping a week, and we haven't decided what the topic is going to be for next week. Got a pretty good idea, or for 2 weeks from today, haven't decided yet. So let me know what topics that you would like for us to address by going to paulsurvey.com and letting us know, because we'd love to hear your suggestions for topics that we might address. And with that, we're going to come back to our open Q&A and live coaching, and hopefully we've got a couple more questions. We have about 15 minutes left on today's call, so it's never too late for you to ask a question. Stephanie, do we have any?
Yes, we do. Do I need a business plan to raise capital?
The short answer is no, you don't. But it can be extremely helpful. So in some cases, I think that you do need a bit of a business plan to raise capital. For example, if you're creating a full private placement memorandum, or if you're choosing to raise capital via a Reg A or a Reg A plus public offering, you have a responsibility to disclose the business in a fair amount of detail. And in most cases, a one-page business overview or a pitch deck isn't going to work in those circumstances. So if you're doing a Reg A, Reg A plus public offering, or some other state-specific direct public offering, or if you're raising capital via a private placement memorandum, which is required if you're doing a 506D, and you're having any non-accredited investors with that, then I think getting a business plan is a very, very good idea. In fact, I think it's part of the disclosure requirements in those particular cases. But you don't have to have one legally in many other cases. Here in Silicon Valley, for example, most of your initial capital is raised via a pitch deck and a one-page business overview, and not necessarily a complete business plan. There may be other areas of the country where you have a very sophisticated capital market that is looking for a particular kind of deal that doesn't really require a business plan. Now, that being said, I think there are two really great reasons to have a complete business plan. One of them is if you are a product company. If you're a physical product company and you're manufacturing a consumer product here locally or overseas, something that's tangible that you have to ship out to people, I think creating an investor-grade financial model and a business plan is a very, very good idea, because with product companies, you have fixed assets, you have inventory, you have accounts receivable, you have marketing expenses, you have product development expenses, engineering expenses, all kinds of expenses that you don't have with a service company, and it really pays you to think things through on a business plan and with a financial model in order to really decide how much capital to raise and how you're going to spend that capital. I've done 150 or so financial models, I believe, and every single one of them yields a surprise of some way or the other. And if you're raising capital for a product company, I think it's almost mandatory for you to do some level of business planning in order to make sure that you understand how much capital it needs to be raised. And even if none of that stuff is true, I'm a big fan of a business plan that really helps you think through the business. Because in order to write a business plan, you have to have a product development plan, you have to have a sales plan, a marketing plan, a staffing plan, a facilities plan, a service plan, a manufacturing plan. You kind of have to have all of those plans in place in order to create a quality business plan. And generally speaking, my experience is that companies don't do the level of thinking it through that they could, and that would, I think, be really advantageous to them unless they create a really good business plan. So let me sum that up and give you the bottom line. The bottom line is no, you don't need a business plan to raise capital. In some circumstances, it's almost a legal requirement, if not a really, really good idea, so that you can fairly disclose the business that you have and the business that you are creating to your investors. And for many people, getting a business plan, a formal, quality, investor-grade business plan, is a really, really good idea, because it facilitates the thinking of it through, and it facilitates the communication and the cooperation for the team. I did a business plan for a client just a few months ago that essentially already had the capital raised. They knew how much capital that they were going to need, and they knew where they were going to go get the capital, but they chose to focus on getting a business plan so they could get the entire team together and agree on what the business was going to do and how they were going to express that, what their value propositions were, what their competition was, and especially to go through the financial modeling process so that they knew, how they were going to spend their money and how much money that they needed. They chose to go through that level of detailed planning to make sure that the executive team was all on the same page, and I'm sure it really did pay off for them as well. So it was kind of a long-winded answer when a simple yes/no might have started out, it's simple, but it is a little bit more rich question than it might appear to be on the surface. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. My growth has really plateaued. What do I do to get growing again?
Whoa, that's a good one. Every company goes through plateaus. Sometimes those plateaus or even those, slowdowns happen because of things like recessions, of economic considerations or situations that are totally out of your control that have caused you to either take a step back or to, just really taking the wind out of your sails in some way. So usually when you find yourself at a plateau and you want to go forward, usually the answer is marketing of some kind, some sort of a new marketing program. And a lot of times that is goes hand in hand with some sort of introduction of a new product or a service. So without introducing new products or services at all, without increasing your staff, without opening up a new location, without investing in those kinds of things, you can always run a promotion for your business. So a lot of people say that marketing and success in business is about products, pricing, promotion, and placement. So don't forget the promotions. You can run a special. You can say, you can run a special that says, that, hey, we normally offer our products at this particular price point, but if you act today, you can get it on a particular special. So promotions can be a way to help move the business forward and get people to take action if you find yourself to be in a plateau. Other ways are to introduce new products and services to the marketplace. And other ways might be just to open up a new marketplace, to do marketing in a way that you haven't done before. Physically, that means that maybe the way that to get off the dime is, if your business is in Denver, that we open up a branch location in Colorado Springs, or we open up a branch location in Kansas City, or we open up a branch location in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Wherever you are, it may be that opening up a new location is a way to get yourself off of being stuck on that plateau. It may be that introducing a new product or service, maybe you invest in a little bit of product development activities, or you introduce a new product and service to the marketplace, something that you haven't done before, that gives your marketing people something to tout and gives your sales people something to talk about. And by the way, we can open up new virtual locations as well. If you've primarily been marketing on Facebook, maybe it's time to market on LinkedIn or Twitter, or maybe it's time to do virtual event market or digital marketing with a new alliance partner, something like that. There's lots of things that you can do from a product point of view and from a marketing point of view to get yourself off the dime and get yourself moving forward. But usually it has to do with some sort of marketing program, some new product placement, some new pricing, or some new promotional strategy to help give your marketing people something to talk about, your salespeople something to talk about, and your customers reason to do business with you today rather than later. And with that, let me mention, I failed to mention it in our presentation, today is our last day of our Gold to Silver campaign. So if you've thought to take advantage of the opportunity that you've most likely seen in some of the emails that we've put out, or where you get the value of our gold package for the price of our silver package, don't hesitate to reach out, because today is the last day of that special promotion that we're running. And we'd love to help you out and offer this special package to you. And I've got 12:57, so Stephanie, I think we got room and time for one more question. Do we have another question?
Is it easier to raise capital in Silicon Valley than other places?
That is a great question, and I put on my good attorney's hat here and say it depends. So, for example, if you have what's going to be the next Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, or Twitter, or some other hardware device associated with the internet, or an internet security device, or something like that, this may be a far easier place to raise capital than, say, Omaha, Nebraska, or Chattanooga, Tennessee. Not knowing anything about Omaha or Chattanooga, I know that the Silicon Valley capital market is one of the top 5 or 6 most sophisticated capital markets in the world, and there are literally thousands of investors, dozens or hundreds of venture capital firms. I think there's 190 venture capital firms or something like that in Silicon Valley, who are all looking for that next Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you've got one of those, then this can be a great place for you to come and raise capital in the marketplace, especially if you've got eyeballs on your websites and can demonstrate any sort of market traction at all. Because one of the first questions the investors here will ask you are the same questions that they ask you on the Shark Tank. Who are you selling it to, and how many of you are sold, and what were last year's revenues, and what have been your revenues year to date? If you got great questions or great answers to all of those questions, you can find this to be a very friendly environment indeed to raise capital. However, if you're raising capital for a consumer product, if you're raising capital to finance your next movie, if you're raising capital to buy a ranch and go doing ranching, or to invest in your next oil and gas deal or your next real estate deal, Silicon Valley might not be the most friendly place for you at all. If you want to raise capital for a movie, maybe it's Los Angeles. If you want to raise capital to go into oil and gas venture of some kind, maybe it's Houston, Texas, or Southern Texas in some way. If you're going to raise capital for a big ranch or a big farm, it might be Chicago. And if you're raising capital to start the next fashion house, maybe it's New York City. If you're raising capital for to set up a plant in Asia, maybe you go raise capital in Hong Kong or London or some other foreign market. So it really does depend on the nature of your business, the industry that you're in, and I think also the amount of capital that you're going to raise and how big of business that you want to create as to where the most favorable spot is for you to raise capital. For most people, and if you listen to my 6 stages of raising capital office hours presentation, number 18, the best place for you to start to raise capital is in your hometown, because it's with other potential founders, it's with your family and friends, it's with those what I call friendly angels, those people who already know you, who are going to be most interested in helping you out in those early stages of your business. And I always coach people to raise capital in your hometown first, from people who already know you first, before you go across the country to Silicon Valley to try to raise capital from those people who don't know you, who have a tendency to invest in 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000 opportunities that they see. You'll find the ears to be a little bit friendlier in your hometown, I think in most cases, than you will in Silicon Valley. But again, if you're going to start the next Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, or you have a possibility of creating a billion-dollar business, there is no place better on the face of this planet than Silicon Valley to create your next billion-dollar business. And I strongly encourage you to come visit us here in Silicon Valley. I'd be happy to help you out however you can. And with that, I have 1:01 p.m. So I'm going to say goodbye to today's office hours presentation, invite you to take advantage of our Gold to Silver campaign, and this is the last day of that, and to think about joining us for the next office hours in 2 weeks, our Awaken CEO conversation on September the 9th, and our first ever planning session, our interactive workshop that we're doing for the Brilliant Business virtual event on September the 19th, Saturday. And until I see you again, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.